Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we thought we would tackle something that many of us are experiencing, especially as we approach midlife, and that is our attitude and feelings about aging. Well, today we can learn how we can actually embrace that maturity with our author who's joining us here on the program today. We can learn with joy how to strengthen our bodies, which change year to year. We'll also learn how to address an age-negative attitude and create an age-positive one, including a plan to fully revamp your life so that you can be more of who you want to be with every step forward. Our guest today is a clinical psychologist and wellness expert who makes her home in Sonoma, California. She has a holistic body-mind approach to being able to deal with what we would like to call joyful aging, which happens to be pretty much the title of her book, Aging Joyfully. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Dr. Carla Marie Manley. Dr. Manley, hello. How are you today?
I am wonderful. Thank you for having me.
That's so enthusiastic. So I guess you're embracing your age joyfully. Tell us how this journey started for you.
Let's see. Well, for me, the work with Aging Joyfully, the book, has been part of my process in being able to really look at why I feel so joyful at this time in my life and how I could help other people learn to embrace that same sense of joy. I've evolved into actually finding more joy in my life, more purpose, and more meaning. And I think that aging joyfully ultimately comes from us being able to look at our preconceived notions of aging, also looking at the messages from society about aging, and then choosing to evolve in a way that feels right to us.
Now let's go ahead and first of all address how society looks at aging, especially here in America, because it's certainly much different here than it is in most other parts of the world. What have you experienced?
What I found, Daniel, is that in America, we tend to look at life after 21 or so as being a downhill slide. And there's a part of us that is very externally focused, very much focused on looking youthful, looking, beautiful, whatever that means to people. And so this is worsened to me, in my eyes, by the media's consistent effort to airbrush and make people think that they must. And of course, it's because they sell products. And so that people must conform to some idealized standard of what beauty is and youthfulness is. And so I think that's one piece of it. I think the other piece is that we have evolved in a way that no longer have a focusing on the benefits of people who are older. We look at them as being not relevant, as being a burden, as being past their prime. And, historically, other cultures have definitely found value in people who are older in years. They looked at them for their wisdom and their contributions that they could make to their society at whatever age they were. And we don't tend to do that anymore.
I know we had a guest on the program a good few years ago, and her husband decided to trek the Gobi Desert, and they were in their mid-60s when they decided to do this. And there was an incident where they were actually stopped by the Chinese military police, and they were detained briefly. And they said that during that time when they were with these officials, they were really surprised by the reverent respect that they were being paid, by these people. They weren't just treated like a couple of aging, crazy people out there in the desert wandering around, but actually as respected elders. They said it was really surprising just how kind they were. And so you think, I wonder what that would have been like if they were here.
Absolutely. And I had the good fortune of being in Africa last year and was amazed, again, at the disparity between the U.S., where we tend to marginalize people who are older, and cultures that, I was immersed in for a bit, where they really valued not only extended family, right? The sense of having the child, the parent, and the grandparent in one home. And even, one of the guides I was talking with said, well, that's normal for us. We see it as being social insurance, right? Where we're proximate to each other, we care for each other, we revere our elders, and we don't want to warehouse them. We want to take care of them. We value them. And so you're right, that sense of reverence, I think, has largely been lost. And I'm not a big television watcher, but it is interesting to me that what little I had seen as far as movies and TV shows, we often look at our older people as being burdens, foolish, caricatures, crazy, or, and sadly, some of the attention that is given to older people is when we're focusing on something like Alzheimer's, right, or Parkinson's. So people then equate being older with being frail or suffering from dementia, so we don't see the many benefits that come with aging.
I was just watching an episode, speaking of television, of the show Mom. And it's about this group of women who are recovering addicts. And so they go to an AA meeting and they share. And one of them is an older woman who had actually been sober, I think, in the show for something 30-plus years. And she, apparently the scene was in the supermarket, she kind of lost her cool with the clerk that was supposed to serve her at the deli counter, I think it was. So as she was sharing in the group about part of the incident, the first thing out of her mouth is she says, getting older sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And she was mainly saying it because what had happened is that the deli clerk looked right through her, even though she had the next number, and wanted to help the next person behind her as though she just didn't exist at all. And you have to wonder sometimes how often people who are aging experience this. And I mean, you can see how it can wear on a person, and I know your book has a lot of positive things as to how we actually deal with even the thought process. For instance, feeling that sense of depression, like, I'm getting older and I'm feeling like maybe I'm going to be marginalized or something. Let's go ahead and talk about what you share in your book that helps people deal or work with that depression, or that possible depression, if you will.
I think that it's so important to, in Aging Joyfully, I really walk people through. There are 90 wisdom tips in Aging Joyfully, 90 of them. And what I really like about creating the wisdom tips is helping people, readers, really be able to evaluate where they are in life, if they're feeling depressed, if they're feeling anxious, and then give concrete tips, solid steps that you can take to slow down, to notice the areas where you're struggling or where you might soon be struggling, and then be able to take a proactive approach. And one of the wisdom tips helps the reader really start looking at what I call self-ageism. And I termed it that for a reason, because I think so many times in life we have attitudes that we are not aware of. And so we might, as we age, unconsciously be thinking, I'm frail, or I'm not as pretty, or I'm not as handsome, or one that I often hear from my clients is I'm not relevant anymore. I'm not up to speed. I never will be up to speed. And so if we start looking at our internal voice, some that we have created of our own accord, some of those negative thoughts and beliefs, and some that we've absorbed because of being in a society that doesn't value older people as much. And so I think that's, one of the most beautiful pieces of the book, because once we're aware of our own internal tape, then we can take steps to begin to adjust it. And let me tell you a funny one about an adjustment I needed to make of my own accord, is as I was writing Aging Joyfully, guess what word crept in? The word young, the word youthful. These tips will help you feel younger. This tip will help you look more youthful. And I realized, wait a second, that's self-ageism. I don't need to look younger. I don't need to feel more youthful. What I want is to look more radiant, feel more radiant, feel healthier, feel more vibrant, and I don't need to equate that with youth as though it is not present at my own age or an age in the future.
You know, it's funny that you bring up young, as there was a group up in the Northwest while we were still up there, and they'd have a gathering. I think it was once a month. And it was so they can get together and socialize and dance, things like that. And I remember the first time they had their meetup, they asked me to come in and do a talk. And it was a dinner, sort of a dinner party, if you will, dancing, that sort of thing. And the very first song they play as it was time to dance was Forever Young. I'm like, really? Please. But, you know, it's kind of like they're doing it, you know, and you hear those kind of cliches thrown around, you know, for instance, I'm 59 years young. It's like, what's with the denial?
Right.
So, you know.
And it's interesting that you say that, because the piece about that Bob Dylan song Forever Young, because if you slow it down, I revisited that song recently and purposefully because I wanted to understand what the lyrics meant. And interestingly enough, I came to really appreciate the song because it's talking about, maybe, I wish he would have used maybe a different word than forever young, but he is really talking about embracing your truth, embracing your rights, embracing your sense of self throughout life. And that made me have such a sense of being able to offer more to people as far as when I'm talking to them, being able to say the idea is about creating this constant sense of being able, no matter what age you are, to stand in your truth, to know your truth first off, to love yourself, and to continue to blossom. And so maybe it would have been lovely if he had, named the song Forever Blossoming or Forever Evolving. Wouldn't that be beautiful?
Yeah, that's for sure. Now, here's a big one I know you talk about in your book, and that is regret. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of us seem, there's no way around that. You're going to have something you regret, but it's more important, I believe, that you regret things that you have done rather than the things that you haven't. What is your thoughts on this?
I think that regret, again, I in Aging Joyfully, as one of the wisdom tips, I have people write a letter of regret to themselves. Might seem counterintuitive, might seem negative, but it's actually intended to be freeing. Because if we have regrets and we don't face them and process them, then they will sit with us in the form of anxiety, worry, often depression. Regret brings up a sense of depression. And so I invite readers to actually look at their regrets. Why? Because if we look at our regrets, process them, we can free ourselves from the negative energy. And in fact, we might be able to find the gifts that came because we didn't do something. So an example is, sometimes I will run across somebody who says, I really regret not having children, or I really regret never getting married. And then they will find that, perhaps you're too old to have biological children, but you can, you likely had wonderful things happening that may not have occurred in your life had you had children, because children are time-consuming and, all of that. And so people come to realize that perhaps a choice that was made wasn't all bad, and that indeed, now at this stage in your life, it doesn't have to remain a regret. So perhaps you weren't married. Well, now you can get married. You're never too late to find a good relationship. Perhaps you were in a place where you didn't have children, but maybe now is the time where you can have children through being a foster parent or volunteering, that, in ways that you can let go of the regret, and instead of channeling energy into the regret, channel energy into the future.
I like that you said that, because there's the other part I think that can actually help people with any possible depression, and that is just activity. For instance, as you were saying, getting out there and perhaps volunteering and getting involved with the community.
And that, Daniel, is such an important piece, because I think sometimes in our 20s, 30s, and 40s particularly, we are so focused on accumulating, learning, growing, establishing, right? And that, whether it's building a career, building a family, that building friendships, all of that, that when we come to later stages in life, 50s, 60s, ideally life has slowed down a bit. Career is more settled, we're in pre-retirement or post-retirement, and then we can take all of that energy that was once spent on, accumulating and consolidating and, building, and use that to give back. And to me, it's actually really beautiful, because I volunteer once a week, and I find that when I volunteer, I actually feel better about me. So it's I go to a drug and alcohol rehab center, and I teach, meditation and do some work there, and I leave every time feeling better about me. And I tell the women I volunteer with, I says, "Oh, I so enjoy being part of your process. So enjoy it." And so if we each volunteer and give back in whatever way we can, whether it's, working at a soup kitchen or, volunteering with animals. I have a client who is feeling really down and lonely, and he's retired, and I suggested that he volunteer, and he found a spot with an animal shelter, and he has started and goes, once a week, and he does the laundry. It's the entry-level step of volunteering, and he is having so much fun. He never thought he would have so much fun, and he's meeting other people and making connections and feeling better about himself.
Now, there was a unique part in the book, and I kind of identified with this a little bit. And you talk about how older women experience what's known as a dragon side emerging. Tell us about that.
I think so. First, I'd like to ask you what that means to you. What does that bring up for you?
Well, it's kind of like a way, I think, where you get feisty and you kind of get tired of feeling that sense, like we were talking about earlier, of being marginalized, perhaps overlooked, or you don't feel that you have value, so to speak. And so sometimes you just kind of bring it out, roar, if you will.
Right. And does that strike you as a positive thing?
Yeah, for me it does, because I usually like to throw a lot of humor in it. My intention, obviously, isn't to really hurt anybody, that sort of a thing, if it does come out. But then again, my natural birth sign is the dragon, so.
And see, and for some people, that piece brings up a sense of when a woman becomes a little more, self-aware and a little more dragon-like in energy, right? It can be scary for some people. For me, I think that it's really empowering and beautiful to see when it's coming from a place of strong self-esteem and dignity and respect, because I think that's a beautiful part that it does not always happen with aging, because sometimes people retract or never learn to grow their self-esteem. But it is something that women can, and men can, as they get older, realize, wait a second, I spent all these years of my life trying to conform, trying to do what everybody else wanted. No. I'm done with that. I want to be me. I want to learn more about me and stand up for me and live more fully. And that, I think, is where more of the joy comes from the living fully, from being the self and loving the self.
Well, it's pretty amazing to think, as you really embrace this joyfully. Have you found people have had pretty unique changes as a result of moving into this action?
I think that it really depends on the individual. And I run a weekly evening women's group, and now and again I'll get, there are younger women who come, and sometimes it'll be, largely women in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And what I find in these groups, especially when they're, a little heavier weighted toward the 50s and 60s, is that these women are embracing change. They don't know what to do with it, but they are finding that they're done with a relationship where they felt undervalued or unappreciated, that they want to stir things up. They want to stir things up in their emotional world. They want to stir things up in their financial world, their business world. They want, and they might not know how to do it, which is the beauty of therapy and women's groups, is then you give the support for that. But I think that is the best of us, when we don't see aging as a progression to a grave, where we see aging as a progression into a new way of being.
Pretty exciting stuff. How has your book been received by the community?
It has, I have to say, the day before it went to print, it received a star review from Publishers Weekly, and that was one of the first things that told me, wow, this is a book that is being really well received. And then Publishers Weekly reached out to me to do an in-depth interview, and I've had a lot of interest in the book, and the publisher, Familius, is an amazing publisher, and people, interesting to me is that men are appreciating the book as well, and indeed it is a book that's extremely appropriate for men and women, because except for a few elements in the health and wellness section, really the ones pertaining to menopause, it is 100% applicable for men's lives. And even the part about menopause, because most men have a woman in their lives, married, or otherwise, that it is all information that is really helpful to know, because the steps of aging, whether it's facing retirement, facing relationship changes, role changes, they apply to men and women alike. They're universal.
I know since the beginning of our show, I have seen dramatic change, and I know that when you look at an aging population, women, I think, take the heat harder than the men do, because you think of how we tend to exalt the physical idea of the body versus everything else, especially in America. And so you can see how that downturn in the aging process happens for women where, and I know you had shared a very personal experience in your book about an experience that you had with your first husband.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I was talking with my wife about that, I'm like, what man on this planet would be that, I'm sorry, stupid to make somebody feel that way, But unfortunately, underneath a lot of us, especially in a younger population, that's how we view it. It's like, and so. But I've been throwing out a call to arms and telling men, you better start taking care of yourself, because the women are starting to age much differently than they used to, and they're looking better and better and better. And pretty soon you're going to see, I would think, a very unique power shift there if men don't start paying attention to what's going on and be healthy, because the unique thing is that what I've noticed as women age is there's this confident wisdom they seem to have, and that, and it's, so when you define what does it mean to age joyfully or age gracefully, it's that they have integrated and embraced who they are and they own it. And it's very exciting to see that kind of confidence. At the same time, it can be very intimidating for some, or maybe many men, if they don't watch themselves.
I completely agree, Daniel, and it's really interesting. A piece I'd like to add to that is that I was doing an interview the other day, and the host asked me, what do you tell, a man who's looking at his wife and he's not attracted to her anymore because, she has some wrinkles and, her midline's a little heftier than it used to be? And I said, well, my question to him would be where is your love? Why are you not looking through the eyes of love? And of course, we want to maintain our physical being as best we can. We want to be as healthy as we can, mentally, physically, spiritually, all of that. But if you're looking at a partner and saying, you're not as handsome as you used to be, or you're not as pretty as you used to be, I am wondering where the eyes of love went. Because to me, love, I don't measure, love in terms of number of wrinkles or gray hair. I measure my love in terms of, heart quality, soul quality. So, that's the piece that I think it's important for both sexes to look at. As long as your partner is doing the best he or she can to be healthy in all realms, then allow them to age and respect that as a way of respecting the evolution of life. If that makes sense.
It totally makes sense, Carla. It's pretty amazing to actually bring that kind of perspective. And I think what people will enjoy as they perhaps feel that internal struggle about getting older and how should I be thinking and feeling about this is your book, Aging Joyfully, actually is a very positive message through the whole book. You certainly feel that as you're reading it, and that's what it really should be. Because here's the thing. You can be one of two people by the time you hit, say, 60 or 70, and who knows, even older. You can be somebody who's bitter and sour at the world, or you can be somebody that has a sweetness that just attracts people to you. But it's a choice, ultimately, that only you can make. There it is.
Absolutely. And I think that that, to me, is one of the greatest gifts, that we have the choice to create, especially as life. We always have the choice to create who we are and how we want to appear in life. But as time speeds up for us, an opportunity opens, because hopefully we do have a little bit more time on our hands once we're done raising children and making sure we have the finances in order, that then this is the opportunity. I just get so excited about it, because I see this as soul time. This is the time that we really get to continue to craft the kind of person we want to be.
Absolutely, because you're the one that has to live with yourself.
Absolutely, and none of us are taking, our assets with us in any way, whether it's the physical body and to me, this is the time where we get to give and embrace and encourage more than we ever have. And I don't take this lightly, because I see it as we are role models, each one of us, no matter what our age is, for somebody in the world. And when we really take our role of being a good human being seriously and embracing who we are and walking as tall as we can, and really radiating goodness, authenticness. And that doesn't mean that we need to be focused on external beauty, because as we've been kind of saying the whole way through, beauty to me is about the spirit and the energy that shines through. And so if somebody is 20 and they're angry and jaded and, miserable, I don't care how physically attractive they are, right? They're not radiating joy. And so no matter what, and same thing can happen to somebody who's 70. They can be angry and rageful and resentful, and indeed they may not be attractive, right? But it's up to us to see aging as the time where we can cultivate a joy, a beauty, an energy that allows us to be radiant and joyful.
Absolutely. Carla, it's been a pleasure to have you on the program. For our listeners out there, how can they find your book, and is there a website they can go to, Aging Joyfully?
Absolutely. Okay, they can go to the website, Aging Joyfully. It will link them directly to me if they go to Aging Joyfully. They can also go to my website, which is drcarlamanley.com, and they can find when they're on my website, they can see a link to IndieBound. And if you're a lover of supporting local businesses, as I am, IndieBound will help you find where you can find a copy of Aging Joyfully close to you. There are also links to Amazon and Barnes & Noble online if that's easier.
Well, very good. Dr. Carla Manley, thank you for being on the Beyond 50 radio program and sharing your book, Aging Joyfully. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Thank you. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for joining us. Another thing you can do joyfully is visit us at our website at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter. Keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50 as well as upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.